So I'm delighted to start off the event. I'm Jamie McCall. I'm the creative director at PLB. We're an interpretation design consultancy in York. I'm chairing the theatre today, and our first of our sessions is community curation in historic spaces, the Indian Army at Hampton Court Palace. And I'd like you all to welcome Jatinder, Kailey, Zakira, Begum, and Rav Singh, who will take you through it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So I'm just going to introduce ourselves first. So I think we've just been introduced, so I'll skip that bit. Jatinder and I are from Historic Royal Palaces, and we are part of the public engagement team. And today we also have Rav Singh with us as well, who is from A Little History of Sikhs. We work together on the Indian Army at the Palace exhibition at Hampton Court Palace. I'm just going to go through what I did, Zakira. I'm the interpretation officer at Hampton Court Palace, and I was the project and interpretation lead on the exhibition. My role was to lead the project team from conception to delivery in all aspects of the exhibition development, particularly focusing on co-curation and creation and community partnerships.
I'm Jatinder. Hello. I am the community partnerships producer at Historic Royal Palaces. So I led on the community engagement aspects of the exhibition, and that included collecting oral histories and programming events for our community partners.
I'm Rav. I'll be later.
I'll
be mine later.
No, go up.
Sorry, I'm on the mic today. So I'm Rav. I am the founder of A Little History of the Sikhs, and I'm here today with Dr. Tejpal Singh Ralmil, and together we are the community curators for this exhibition. Thank you.
We're going to do a lot of
Jumping up and
down. So just a quick introduction into who Historic Royal Palaces are. So Historic Royal Palaces, we look after 6 of the most wonderful palaces in the world. We're not shy about saying that.
Yeah.
So we look after the World Heritage Site, Tower of London, Hampton Court Palace, Banqueting House in Whitehall, Kensington Palace, Kew Palace in Kew Gardens, and Hillsborough Castle and Gardens in Northern Ireland. Historic Royal Palaces is an independent charity. We are paid for sites and raise funds to maintain and conserve our palaces. We acknowledge as an organisation we come from a place of financial privilege, and hopefully this talk will provide insight into what can be achieved with a sizable core budget. At HRP, we want to inspire learning and connection with our stories, and to do this, we are guided by our cause and its principles. In 2020, our cause evolved from helping everyone explore stories to being more active, inspiring and provoking change. For us, particularly in the community partnerships team, this everyone and every spirit are the people living, studying and working near to our palaces, our local communities. Hampton Court Palace is widely known as the home of the Tudors. However, the story of the Indian soldiers' encampment was, and still is, something that is largely unknown by the public and our visitors. It is a story that is known internally by our staff, from front of house teams to curators. However, we've never really had a physical display to help tell us this story to our visitors. The Indian Army at the Palace exhibition builds on the success of Standing with Giants in November 2021. This was a unique installation which consisted of 100 Tommy soldiers and 25 Indian soldiers on display in the East Front Gardens of Hampton Court Palace. The Palace reached out to A Little History of the Sikhs to help with the design of the Indian soldier silhouette. The display delivered national impact in the press, prompted emotional reactions and reflections from visitors, and established lasting links with local community groups.
So I'm going to talk to you about a little bit of the hidden history that was uncovered. So curatorial research in 2021 led to uncovering stories about coronation encampments at Hampton Court Palace, which were not included in the Standing with Giants interpretation. Additionally, Historic Royal Palace's previously unseen collection of the Indian Army material had now been catalogued, and A Little History of Sikhs were keen to work with us to uncover new stories and material which could tell the story of the Indian Army at Hampton Court Palace. These encampments we know from archival evidence with regiments, what regiments these soldiers were a part of and what they did while they were camping at Hampton Court Palace. Activities included going on day trips to other palaces like the Tower of London, and also visiting Chelsea Football Club, and many more activities as well. They were here to be showcased as a strong part of the British Empire, which meant that they were treated well most of the time. However, there were other darker elements at play within these visits, such as the segregation of the camps of white officers and Indian soldiers. Troubling events such as the measuring and recording of Indian soldiers based on ethnicities, and in turn the use of scientific race theories such as eugenics was employed at the time as well. This is a theme that is explored within the exhibition and how they have had a lasting impact and affect the South Asian community today.
So as part of the exhibition, we uncovered some... Sorry, yeah,
Next
lost my notes. We uncovered some new stories, one of which was about Princess Sophia, who was the youngest daughter of Maharaja Dalip Singh, the last Sikh Maharaja of the Punjab. Dalip Singh was exiled in England, but became close to Queen Victoria, who after his death granted his daughter Sophia nearby Faraday House. Sophia became notorious for taking on radical causes, including women's right to vote and later Indian self-rule. During the First World War, she raised funds for the Indian soldiers and even nursed wounded troops in the Indian Army Hospital in Brighton Pavilion. Here in this picture, the princess, who is front row, second from the left, sells Our Day flags with a group of her influential Indian friends in London. That single event raised over £1 million, and in 1919, she invited some of the Indian soldiers from the Hampton Court encampment over to her place at Faraday House for tea and took their photographs. Oh, there we go.
So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the exhibition narrative and how it was conceived. So the exhibition narrative was devised with close collaboration with our community curators. One of them is here. This is Rav Singh there, and one of them's in the crowd right now in front of me, Tej, right there, Tej Radmill. We did this in order to basically centre the South Asian voice in the exhibition. Together, we created a layered narrative that focused more heavily on the emotions, feelings, and impact of this history on today's South Asian community. We started with the history of the soldiers who have camped on various occasions, such as for peace celebrations in 1919 to mark the end of World War I, and also Edward VII's coronation in 1902, with a focus on life at camp, including what soldiers did and also where they went and what they ate as well. We also wanted to give space to the wider impact their presence had on Britain. At the time, focusing on the interests of the press and public alike, specifically focusing on how they were presented via images in newspaper articles. Some were very positive and some were not so much. The main narrative of this exhibition focuses on the modern day context of how their presence has impacted Britain today. What do we know and what don't we know about this history? Much as what we do know isn't written down really. A lot of this history is told within the South Asian community orally through family stories, and we aim to create an exhibition that has a lasting impact for future generations and how we relate to World War One and World War Two history, while also changing the common narrative around this history. Themes of memory, identity, and belonging were explored through donated objects on display via a public call out for objects and stories from the South Asian community relating to World War One, World War Two, and the coronations. So to devise this, we employed an ethical framework right at the beginning of this exhibition. So we developed this with the help of Richard Sandell and the Research Centre of the Museums and Galleries at the University of Leicester. At the beginning of this project, the team recognised the importance of having a written document where we could refer to and use throughout the development of the project. It was used in all aspects of the content and design development, and enabled us to centre the South Asian voice. Enabled us to centre the South Asian voice in the exhibition, which was a key part of the framework. For example, it is worth noting that going through this process highlighted the need for sensitivity training for both project team and community partners. We worked with an outside freelance contractor to develop 2 workshops focusing on the needs of the project team and the front of house teams and volunteers as well. The outcome of these workshops led to a trauma-informed communication guide being created that can be used going forward with internal staff members when creating future exhibitions and projects. A key takeaway from this process is that we noticed that it filtered into everything that we did and was used as a reference point for decision making for all aspects of the content and exhibition development. I think I'm going to hand over to Jatinder. Yeah.
So to enable us to centre the South Asian voice and experience for this exhibition, as Zakira mentioned, we decided to do a public call out specifically to the South Asian community, asking for objects and memories relating to the themes of World War One, World War Two, the Indian Army and soldiers who were part of the camps at Hampton Court Palace. The call out was translated into several South Asian languages, including Punjabi, Hindi, Bengali, Sylheti, Farsi, Pashto, Gujarati, and Urdu, and then sent out to our community network and uploaded to a dedicated web page about the project. The submissions ranged from personal family histories to photographs of soldiers and press clippings from newspapers reporting on the encampments from the time. We've also worked very closely from the beginning of the project with our community curators, Rav and Dr. Tejpal Ralmil, who is an expert on Indian military history. So this enabled us to fact and sensitivity check on all of our subjects. We selected a mixture of HRP-owned objects and community objects on display throughout the exhibition. And again, this was done in collaboration with Rav and Tej. Many of the objects were originals, but we also have digital prints of some of the objects due to their fragility and availability. And this is literally only a very tiny small section of what HRP has in the collection. So going on to the oral histories. So through working with Rav and Tej, we were amazed to find 5 individuals who were descendants of the Indian soldiers who were camped at Hampton Court Palace. We decided to give these stories a dedicated space to ensure they have the space they need to be told through filming and recording. We felt it was important to highlight the nuance of the descendants' stories. Some wanted to celebrate their ancestors' military achievements, while others saw it as a means to end to work for the British Empire. Alongside the film, we also commissioned portraits of the descendants, and these were taken by a prominent British Punjabi photographer, Harkaran.
Oh, cool. Is that me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the exhibition design. It's quite extensive, so I'm going to keep it quite short. As you can see, the images are of the exhibition, and you can actually go today and still see it. It's on until September thought I'll do a bit of promotion there. The exhibition is in a space that used to be a retail shop. It is 2 rooms and has been repurposed for this exhibition. Again, with close collaboration with community curators, it was chosen due to its connection to the spaces with the Indian Army camps. You can see these spaces when you look out of the windows from the rooms. In the exhibition, we invite visitors to take a walk into the space where you can get a sense of where the soldiers might have walked and were stationed as well, and get a sense of feeling what they might have felt like. The exhibition team worked with designer Patrick Fry Studio to use the existing cabinets and set works within the room, making this a more sustainable exhibit with a limited budget. Patrick Fry's previous work includes the Silk Road installation at King's Cross. We have made we made a considered effort to work with designers, photographers and practitioners that understand the subject matter and have a lived experience of being part of the South Asian community. We also developed a soundscape for the space in close collaboration with community curator Rav Singh and community partners. The soundscape was developed to invoke a sense of what it might feel like to be in the camps yourself and in the various occasions the soldiers camped at Hampton Court Palace. This was done through recorded voices of Indian soldiers' letters being read out in the many languages of the camp that Jatinder kind of mentioned just there, that might have been heard if stationed at the camps. And now I'm going to hand over to Rav because he did kind of lead on all of this.
Okay, let's do a sound check. Can you hear me okay? All good? So how do we record letters? So we're going to start with the soundscape. And this, I think, for me was interesting in that Zakira had it as an ambition from some of the early meetings, but she told me about it about 2 months before the exhibition was supposed to open. And we are familiar with the books. There's Indian Voices of the Great War by David Omisi and University of Hull, and there's Sikh Voices of the Great War by Sukhwinder Bassi in London. So these 2 books have got all the letters, but they're in English. So my assumption was that the British Library would have the original letters because that's what the British Library does. No, these researchers just had the English letters. So what we had to do, by promising Zakira we would get the voices done in the original languages, was reverse translate them back to the languages they were in 1919. And then we needed to find 20 to 30-year-old voices from the Punjabi community in London, or the Muslim community, or the Gujarati community. That's not going to happen in the male sector, I'm telling you that now, right? All of our Punjabi school teachers were female. You know, all the teachers who work with me were female. So I put a call out to some people in the network, a theatre company and another organisation who work in the Urdu speaking field. And kindly, you know, with a month to go, they were very happy. And the 3 of us worked through Punjabi, Hindi, Gujarati and Urdu. We then had a day at the Palace to record a whole PDF file full of books. And now when you go in the exhibition, you hear these voices in the background, but in an array of languages, you know. And some people don't spot it, you know, they just assume that it's just recordings from the time, you know. It's just like, it's not. It was very, very difficult to put together. And I think that's because of the time constraint.
Yeah.
Not that it was a difficult project with the resources, just once the exhibition took shape, to have the voices was the thought of August the 2nd before it opened in September. So oh no, sorry, my bit. Is it that one?
Yeah.
No, it's working with community groups. Yeah, good. Okay. So, A Little History of the Sikhs, what we established probably 15 years ago, was an organisation, a community initiative that translates Sikh, Punjab and North Indian history into walking tours in London, cities in the UK and across Western Europe. And for my own community, this is very difficult to understand, that we have history in Paris, Madrid, Italy, and abundance of history in London, Oxford, Deptford, Brighton. And that's what we do. We curate these tours and we show people aspects of these from museums, galleries, art, streetscape, public spaces. That's what we do. So when we first had the call out from Zakira and the team at the Palace, we responded because my colleague Tej and I, we had probably discussed Hampton Court back in pre-COVID days. But there was nothing tangible there for me to create a tour around. there was nothing other than stories. So one, you got to pay a ticket to go in, get a group, and then the group have got nothing to link to, so I can't show them anything. I'm just going to stand there and tell stories, which I can easily do through a PowerPoint instead. When we do our street London tours, we're showing the evidence in the squares and the little notations and the little histories that are there. So what we started to do then, now 4 years on, is we've got an abundance of items to connect to. Not only did we have the silhouettes, we have the interpretation board, we have the blue plaque that was unveiled last year at Faraday House. Took 25 years to come after the application, but it's there now. And all the stars started to align for me to think, okay, we now have Hampton Court Heritage Days that we can run, and we get spaces that are given to us so we can do an inductive lecture beforehand. And now everyone is an expert, because now they explore the spaces, they understand not only the Indian Army side, but we bring in the palace side as well. And these audiences have been growing ever since we started them. So on a walking tour, we normally have 25 to 40 people on my walking tour. So I thought I could get 25 to 40. And with TEJ, military networks, community groups, all the people we've worked with a day out at the palace being the badge, this Sunday we had 95. So we're bringing the audiences to the palace and we're trying to tell these shared stories. I think that was everything on my list. I don't know if I'm not using the list. Hold on. We go to the back. Shall I say this stuff? Okay. Right. So having worked with the Palace team since May 2021 on this project, while many at the Palace have been busy, so Aileen's here, others are here, you're all busy doing your day job, so you don't get to see what TEJ and I see. Once a month, we open up the Palace to a community, and we really get to see the impact of the exhibition on our own community. And even you two are too busy to come because they've got another exhibition to prepare. So we get to see so we get to see like the fruits of their labour, and it's evident to us every month. So that's all from me, from my side. Going to get the what as well.
Yeah.
We're going to a little bit more.
I'll talk about what went well with the project, because that's always nice to talk about. As Rav mentioned, we actually had a visible new audience. It was a visibly diverse audience that we now have at Hampton Court Palace, and it's meant that we've extended the exhibition for a further 6 months. So it's only a temporary exhibition which was supposed to end in February, March.
Yeah.
And now it's extended until the end of September. So if you haven't seen it, please do come along and come see it, because it's still on at the moment. And as it's a temporary exhibition, we're able to kind of add new ideas. And we were able to work with a creative organization called Project Dastan. So the exhibition became a place to test new ideas and be reactive and adaptive. Project Dastan is an organization. They create a VR experience which documents the partition of India and Pakistan, but it's through the eyes of a child. So you experience the partition through the eyes of a child. And it was the first time we kind of tested using VR within our spaces at Hampton Court Palace. So we had that on for a short period of time. And we kind of went along with the story of partition, because you might think, what link does that have to what we're talking about, the Indian soldier encampments? I think we kind of anticipated when we were collecting the oral histories from our community partners. Partition is always a big thing that comes up within the South Asian community. So we thought that actually might be a nice kind of offshoot to what we're talking about. And it's something that's important. So we thought that could be a nice space to kind of talk about other things that branch off from the main themes of what we're focusing on. We also were able to work with a sensitivity consultant, as Zakira mentioned previously, who provided training for our project team, front of house staff and volunteers. And it just meant internally we were in a good place to speak about a topic that was new for us, especially when it came to things like partition. Also, there was the use of the soundscape, which was in several different languages. And so it was that idea of adding new elements into the exhibition. And also that just added to the accessibility elements that we wanted as within the exhibition. So we had different languages that you could hear within the space. We also had a sensory box for any people that might have had additional access needs. And we also created a sensory palaces session. So sensory palaces is our dementia friendly program that we have at Hampton Court Palace based on the exhibition. As Rav mentioned, there was appreciation amongst visitors from the Sikh, Punjabi and South Asian community for learning, connection and stories, and sincere gratitude, appreciation to the Hampton Court Palace staff who worked to deliver the exhibition. And that was all captured through an evaluator that A Little History of the Sikhs had on their team. So that feedback we will soon get. So I'll hand over to Zakira to talk about the challenges.
Yeah, I get the fun part. So these are some of the challenges. It's not every challenge that we had, but I thought I'd kind of focus on some of them. One of the major challenges that we had is the space. Actually, the space was essentially one room with a corridor and then another room which we dedicated for oral histories, which was a video room. And once again, I know we don't have the video here with us today, but if you make it to Hampton Court, it's worth seeing. So please try and get to see that because it's well worth seeing all the ancestors on that. But one of the challenges we had is grappling with really complex themes such as empire, colonialism, racism, and giving meaningful space to those themes that we were discussing with the project team and our community curators as well. As you can imagine, within one room, you can't cover that. So that was quite a challenge as to how we approach that sensitively with our partners without making them feel like we're not listening to what they're telling us. And one of the reasons why Project Dastan happened is because our partners would, on many occasions, the second thing they talk to us after telling us a story about Indian soldiers and their ancestral heritage, or if they have a connection, would be, oh, and so we also, want to talk about partition because that still affects us today. And so it was really important that we listened to them and made sure that we didn't listen to them and do nothing with that. So it wasn't a transactional kind of relationship, but it's very much we listen and we also act on what they're telling us that they want from the exhibition. And that, again, comes straight from the framework that we did right at the beginning of the exhibition, where we looked into the framework and asked, well, okay, where do we put this story about partition in then? Can we do it? And the framework said, actually, we're centering South Asian voice and we're not meant to be having a transactional relationship with our partners. And that answered that question quite easily for us. And it helped us kind of advocate for that across all of the bigger project teams and also across HRP as to why we were doing certain things. So that was quite a challenge to do that. And one of the challenges was actually not having a kind of because this was a grassroots kind of exhibition that developed, we didn't have a existing framework to work from. So one of the challenges was kind of finding our way a little and taking risks. So I think in the beginning, because we didn't have a framework, we weren't able to kind of disseminate a lot of the information of what we were doing across HRP. So a lot of people, even in our own organization, didn't really know what we were doing until right at the end when we'd finished and we'd be like, okay, now we can tell you how we've done this and how we've got to where we are. We also like working it with any heritage site. If any of you worked at heritage sites, the logistics of working with a historic building are challenging to put on an exhibition. As you can see from the other pictures that were up, we had to make sure that we weren't damaging any of the room, making sure the exhibition design was integrated into the space, but didn't challenge the space, but was very much as if you'd find it in the space anyway. So all of that with our designer was really interesting to work with him, but it was quite a challenge to do that as well. But bear in mind, it used to be a shop, so it was all for lighting. So a nice challenge to have was because it was a small exhibition, we have had lots of groups interested in coming to have tours with Rav and Tej, and just with community groups that Jatinder kind of works with. And because it's a small space, we've had the challenge of kind of not overflowing the space and not, because I think if we had too many people in the exhibition, you won't experience it for what it is, and you won't hear the soundscapes, and it won't be as affecting as it is. So we've had to kind of tell people to come on back another day or split groups up, which is a long going process. We're still kind of figuring out how we're going to do that going forward. And another challenge is trying to please all community curators and partners. I know you're here. I hope we pleased you, but it's challenging to make sure that everyone feels heard and everyone feels like as if their perspective is being seen in the exhibition as well. I await your feedback when it happens. So those are some of the challenges that I went through.
Last slide, back to me. Still hear me okay? Yeah, so I got the legacy slide. So what's the legacy? It's interesting because, as I said, pre-COVID, we had no tangibles, and now we have a blue plaque up at Faraday House. We also have an interpretation board in the grounds where the army camp took place. So that gives me enough to run Heritage Day tours in the future, regardless of an exhibition or not. But we also have a short film that you forgot about, we put onto YouTube, about Sophia the Leaps thing. And we also have these 2 podcasts. So if we work with this information, people can listen to the podcast before the visit. They can see the video after the visit. And all of this stuff, we have the joy of seeing in action. So that's all. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. So, any questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Hello, thank you. How did you identify and select your sensitivity?
Oh, I can't hear you. Sorry.
No? Can you hear me now?
Yes. There we
Okay.
go.
How did you identify and select your sensitivity consultant?
Oh, hand that over to you, Jatinder.
How did we identify and select our sensitivity consultant that we worked with? So we issued out a brief, and we put that out. We got in touch with I got in touch with Iqbal Singh from, I'm going to give him a shout out because he did help me with this, from the National Archives, because I know he's done similar work where he wants to kind of do a trauma-informed response to an exhibition. He gave me links to a few networks to reach out to. So we put the brief out and just the responses we got, like in terms of, I was able to select from the responses that we got. I'm not going to lie, it wasn't a huge amount of responses we got because it is quite a niche thing we were trying to do. And there were recommendations we also got from just other people as well. So yeah, that's kind of how it. Sorry?
What were you looking for? Yeah.
What was I looking for?
Yeah.
I guess someone that had maybe experience in like mental health background. Not necessarily having to have experience with working with exhibitions. I think my main kind of what I was particularly looking for was the mental health work. Yeah,
it's just to add on that, it's worth noting that we had discussions within the project team about what it is that we need training on. So specifically, we did go for a trauma-informed kind of practitioner. I think she had a NHS background.
Yeah.
Because I think she put it really, a quote from her tender would be, she basically said, colonialism and racism and all of the above happen. You can't change that, but it's our responses and how we help people to deal with the outcomes of that and how they deal with their emotions. And that kind of ticked the box for us as to what we were trying to do.
Any more questions?
Can you hear me? Sorry. How did you overcome the challenge? I thought it was great that you put the call in different languages. And did you encounter any challenges in terms of that language barrier in engaging with all participants, and what were the kind of challenges you encountered in terms of resources, and how did you overcome that?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, in terms of putting the open call in different languages, which is great, were there any challenges kind of resourcing wise that you encountered in engaging with all participants?
Oh, the languages that we produced.
Oh, the resourcing of the different languages.
Okay, so that's a simple one. We went out to a contractor who can do that for us. We looked for a contractor who had specifically those languages that Jatinder mentioned. Not everybody does, but because we have DVG content at our sites, that knowledge is within Historic Royal Palaces, so we could draw on that knowledge as to who we should go to get those translations. I think also your family helped out a little. Did a bit of testing for us. Rav and Tej also did some testing with their family for Punjabi. I think I did a bit for Sylheti as well, just because we have a heritage within that, so we can do a bit of kind of checking as well ourselves. Yeah.
Any other questions before we finish up?
Thank you. That was great. My question is around your ethical framework and how that was used to do the final sign off of the in the interpretive text used in the exhibition, and some of the challenges around that would be great to elaborate on.
Just going to repeat it so I
So it was about the ethical framework and any challenges in terms of implementing that on the
implement it within text specifically. So yeah, it was challenging. So the text was written, as anyone who writes text, it has many iterations. We go higher up sometimes with certain subjects, and then we also go to our community partners for sensitivity checks and so forth. The sign-off process is very much depending on what the content is. So anything that was specifically challenging, I'll use an example. When we were talking about eugenicist scientific race theories, that was a very challenging thing to write in about 100 words. But the ethical framework really helped us, because there was a point where we were not going to put it in, or we were thinking about not putting it in because we weren't able to give it enough space or give it enough meaning, basically. But actually, looking at the ethical framework, we'd already agreed right at the beginning that anything that is challenging and that the community partners want to talk about, it was this piece of information about this scientific race theory happening in the camps was brought to us by one of our community partners. And so it was really important that we made sure that it was in there, and it takes center stage. Actually, if you go to the exhibition, it is right there, smack bang in the middle. And I'd like to give a shout out to our senior leadership team who did the advocacy for us, because without their kind of help, kind of giving us a bit of a protection shield, I would say, in terms of to be able to do the work that is challenging, and then they would do the advocacy work higher up for us. So any of the senior leadership teams here, please do that for your teams, because it really helps in giving us confidence to kind of challenge perspectives that we're trying to do at the moment with doing a bit more of a diverse work within our communities and doing diverse exhibitions, really. Yeah. Hope that answered it.
Hi there. Would there be any possibility for continuing the rich legacy of this project with a permanent kind of microsite on the HRP website, possibly, just so that you've got a permanent record that people can use, like teachers?
I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
Record on the HRP website is a
So to repeat the question, it's about how do we actually confirm the legacy? Is there any possibilities of anything on the website or any displays? You mentioned about the exterior panel.
Brilliant. So yes, that's already happening. Legacy work is already happening, and I know the exhibition finishes in September. The reason that is because 70% of the exhibition is community loans, so we have to give them back, unfortunately. And there is talk. We are in the process of putting the story into permanent exhibition spaces for future work as well. So it is all underway, and it's one of the challenges that we have I think across the board with heritage work. A lot of the work that is considered to be diverse and inclusive is all temporary. So we are discussing that within Historic Royal Palaces, and hopefully we'll have answers soon. Yes.
And I think we've got time for one last question. Was there one at the back? No. Okay, so I think that draws it to a close. What a
Okay.
brilliant first talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jatinder and to Zakira and to Rav. Amazing. If you can show your appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.